Would you like to start or do we want to wait a few?
I'm good. That's good to go. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. Okay, well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming onto the call this evening. And just let you know everything's going to be recorded so you can come back and listen to this awesome dear friend of mine that I'm going to be introducing, because you'll want to take lots of notes. And if you can't get all the notes, you can come back on and listen to the recording and invite others as well. So I'm going to read my notes here. I apologize. Let's see if I can. Okay, so Lidy Flom is a certified licensed nutritionist and naturopath who has been paving the way for massive health and nutrition in order to heal holistically for over 35 years now. Lidy is not only passionate about health and nutrition, but passionate about people as individuals, and she's very passionate. She likes to shout it from the rooftops and help the world, traveling all over and just helping as many people as she can by spreading and educating and spreading her knowledge. So I would like to say, Lidy, thank you so much for coming on this evening. We're excited to hear what you have to say. And this evening, Lidy's going to specifically educate us on intermittent fasting. So there you go, Lidy. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for being on the call this evening for those of you that have joined us. And I have to say that, this is called the women's empowerment, and, looking at it from, what we can do as women to be able to go and have our life be, let's call it self-expressed, let's call it dancing with some freedoms. We have, a lot of hormonal changes that take place as we go from teenage to our, prime years, and we can call it prime years for how long are prime years, that we can say we can get into our 50s and 60s and still be in our prime years because we still have some control over our destiny. And so ultimately, the question is, how is it that we can continue to move through all those stages and not have what is called, that body transformation, that body transition, and have the struggles that seem like they are going to defeat us. And as a result of that, the whole conversation around intermittent fasting has surfaced over, the last even 5 years, talking about how important it is. And in 2013, there was some great research that came out, and they started looking at how to intermittent fast and the importance of fasting. And then in 2016, the research that came out was talking about autophagy and how our bodies actually trap what is called the toxins within, and how it can actually link itself up to decomposing toxins. So let's just talk about the very first thing that we are looking at. So what if I told you that there was a way to have better fat loss, less muscle loss? And we know that muscle atrophy is something that can change over the years. What if we talked about improved cardiovascular health and better glucose control, less hunger? We could have no risk of disordered eating behaviors. Sometimes we have, eating patterns that start to shift our whole demeanor in terms of how our body metabolically functions. And subsequently, we have need to have our whole reset happen as a result of what's happening with digestion. We have issues with the body actually taking on toxins and hanging out in our lymphatic system. And so since our lymphatic system is the only system that doesn't have a pump, like your kidneys, your heart, your liver, your spleen, all your organs have a pump except for your lymphatic system. So the question is, how can you get that to move the slug out, right? So with how can we progress forward with, I say, good body imaging and neuroprotective effects? We know that when we have fasting that goes on, all of a sudden we get to a point where it seems like our body is saying, you know what, neurologically, like we're not in balance. So we have intermittent fasting can also reduce the risks of cancer and increase lifespan. It can reduce blood pressure. It can help with obesity, and on and on. And so this is a pretty exciting subject when you start taking a look at, well, what if, the what if. Remember, like you get out of bed some days and you say, today, it doesn't matter what I put on. It's just like, I feel fat. Well, that would be a great day to say, today's my day. Today's my fast day. Which you can prepare for fasting days by actually, in 2013, they started looking at how to prepare, and so that you have your blood sugar right, and so that you don't have the roller coaster of the highs and lows of, anxiety, depression. We have peak is like, I'm feeling great and I'm going for something to like feed my body, but it's not nutritional dense, it's just caloric dense, and usually simple carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates would be a better choice than a simple carbohydrate. So a simple carbohydrate would be refined sugar. And we might look for some, I call it boosters, right? So the boosters can be like the caffeination. And so with caffeine, we're looking for something to give our body a little bit of adrenaline. And adrenaline is short-lived. We're testing and we're challenging our adrenal glands, and our body cannot continue to function like that. So we have what we call adrenal dysfunction. We have adrenal stress, and we end up with a situation where the body is saying, I just cannot work like this. I just can't function like this. This is not going to work for me. And it starts to shut down. So what we're looking at here is like, so what do I do, right? So when we get to a point and we say, oh my, what if I actually did a day or two on a weekly basis? If I did a day or two of fasting, intermittent fasting, on a weekly basis, I am taking out layers and layers and layers of debris, and the layers and layers of debris are all in that, let's call it time frame of what's happening today. So let's call this like the onion, right? And in the core of the onion, you have like all these layers upon layers upon layers in the onion. And when you start with intermittent fasting, you're literally pulling out the core of the onion. And the core of the onion is the piece of the equation that we have to like look at. So now we start taking the debris out. When that is clean, your body is saying, well, let's dump the next layer into that layer. So it's literally has a void, and it's dumping a new layer of garbage into that space. And so now, if you're going to do intermittent fasting, see, some people like are doing intermittent fasting for like a matter of hours. Like they will only be able to manage it for like 6 hours or 12 hours. And so what we're trying to accomplish is a 24-hour cycle. That would be the goal. That's the first goal to get to. So how do we do that? We have to look at being active, drinking more water. And so what we're going to do is we're going to help our body flush the system, and we're not going to chew anything that day. If in fact it is that you're going to look at taking on certain juices, you're going to take on support systems to put in your water, that's going to help you with detoxifying. There are cleansing products and things that we can use that you can actually assist your body in trapping toxicity. Now, here's what's the good news. If you think of it like your toxins are like making a fist on your left hand, and then putting the clamp over with your right hand, what you've got is called the phagocyte, actually encapsulating what is foreign in that body. And it tries to hold it in place. When it finds toxicity, your body says, fighter T cells and B cells, go blow holes through the backside of this invader that we have here. This is garbage. This is foreign matter. This is not going to serve us. This is not anything that we can recognize as useful, and subsequently the body says, abort it. Well, if in fact that the body doesn't have enough fighter T cells, B cells, and strong enough, let's call it phagocytes, to hold this thing in place and encapsulate it, here's what happens. It becomes the full-blown war. Now you have what is the cold, the flu, you got the allergies, you got the itching, you got something that's showing up. And what happened is that the body says, I have too many toxins in the system. I am overboard with toxicity. So if you're overboard with toxicity, here we are today. The body is challenged. So that body that's so challenged, it right now is saying, feed me. I need more resources. Please feed me. And so we become hungry and angry. And that's called hangry. There's a new word out there that's actually, when we're doing a 24-hour fast, we might even become hangry. So it looks like, you know, what's happening is that there's something, your body's starting to work, the phagocytes, your body's encapsulating garbage, and knowing that when it is you start looking at going through a fast, I always like to encourage people to take on distilled water. Why? Because that is a negative charge. So distilled water is negatively charged and toxins are positively charged. So here's what happens, that attraction happens. And if it is that sometimes there's like structured water, I like to encourage like structured water that can be added to even distilled water. So if you just did add something to that distilled water, it can penetrate through the cell walls better. And subsequently it goes in there and then finds the garbage and encapsulates it. And that process is called autophagy or autophagy. It's spelled auto, A-U-T-O-P-H-A-G-Y, autophagy. And when that happens, there is this isosome that actually partners with this encapsulation process, and it begins to put it in into a compost. It decomposes it faster. Now that's what's exciting. I know that there have been researchers that have done a lot of research on this, and they know that if it is that you're health challenged, that somehow you've got to go after the toxicity, like right now. If you want to get over something, got to get through something, you've got, you know, you can have something happen just with a mosquito bite. Somebody's immune system is so suppressed. And then it gets to the point of where it's so suppressed and so confused, we have autoimmune diseases on top of it. The body's so confused, it doesn't know what to take care of anymore. It's completely out of its knowing, out of its knowledge of the wisdom as to what to do. So autoimmune diseases show up. So looking at the word dis-ease. So fasting is going to help and support the body from dis-ease. And that means you're pulling garbage out. And you're also turning up your metabolism because the body says, hey, I can work with this now. So here's what happens. So if you're thinking about, you know, some research that MIT did, they looked at kind of like what this whole fasting conversation was about. And they said within a 24-hour period, you can flip the metabolic switch from off to on. In 24 hours, we can actually switch the metabolic switch from off to on. And that's why when we have like intestinal stem cells that are what powers the intestine, and as people age, this powerhouse starts to slow down. So we have stem cells basically as they're produced, and we know that the body knows how to tell this cell what it's supposed to be and where it's supposed to go and, you know, what it's supposed to become. So imagine that this cell is produced and your body has some areas of weakness. It literally says, this is going to become a pancreas cell. This is going to become a heart cell. This is going to become a blood cell. This is going to be and the body is having that conversation internally. So when we have the garbage out of the way, the communication becomes clearer. And literally, it's like the acceleration of your health begins to happen. So, and then that ties and parallels right with the conversation about, like, when you're wondering, like, why when I have my age progress, my weight as I get older seems to be a pound or 2 or 3 every year. I can't just, part with it. And we know that my gut flora, if we're testing your gut flora, that it is also challenged. So sometimes it's yeast related, and for women in particular, the UTI, the urinary tract infections, are difficult. And most women, as they get to in their 70s and 80s and 90s, start to experience things like falling, losing the equilibrium, and so on. And that comes from the fact that there's this yeast that becomes systemic in the bloodstream. So how can I learn to identify, like, how is that really happening? How should we know about this? So we can see that our lymphatic system needs to be moving the garbage out. Where's your lymphatic system? That's like here in your neck area. You've got a lymphatic system underneath your armpits, in the backside, your breast tissue, your abdomen. It's like inner thighs, knees, ankles. And all of a sudden, you notice things that they're slightly changing. And that's the question asking, like, what's really happening here? I wonder what I could do about that. And so what we're talking about with the intermittent fasting, getting the garbage out of the way and letting your stem cells really be able to continue to tell the body, where to go, what to do, you now switched it back on. That's the day you begin that victory and something starts to change. So researchers have found that fasting for one day can cause the intestinal cell regeneration to double. So if the intestinal cell regeneration can double in one day, then that means that we have better gut flora, and our whole entire intestinal tract has, attachments, like all of the blood vessels, arteries are attached to that colon, and they feed certain body parts. So for example, if you have a clogged colon in one area and the attachment by way of the arteries is in that area is for the heart, you will have what is called maybe a weak heart. And as that goes on and manifests itself, and you have this garbage in your colon, your organs become weaker. So you can have a direct link to a weakness of any organ is related to sometimes what's going on in the colon. Now, some people have outward signs of like they have like little skin tags, for example. They'll, in their neckline, they'll say, I've got these skin tags going on. Well, a skin tag is a direct connection or link to an inward situation. So it's an outward visible sign of an inward challenge, and that's called you have polyps in your colon. So when people say, well, you know what, I've just noticed that I've taken on, cleansing, or I have colon cleansing and I'm doing something like every 6 months, then they'll notice, like, maybe some things change. But when you do intermittent fasting and you do something like a day or 2 on a weekly basis, like, transitional changes happen quickly. And you'll notice it for yourself. You're gonna notice like your skin will change. You'll notice, like, even in terms of, like, where we carry, some excess, your skin can tighten up in your face, and you'll say, oh gosh, it looks like I got a little facelift today. It's actually the toxins that are in the layers of your skin. So it is so important for us to actually start to look at that. So if cells can regenerate on their own roughly in every 4 days, and we talked about in 24 hours, that the intestinal cell lining regeneration can double, then we know that we are on the right track, right? So all of a sudden, we start taking a look at what we can do for extending that 2-day. So how you prepare for a fast is that you like to take a day or two prior to that and do protein pacing. And there's a lot of research. You can go Google this. You can go look online. You can find this. But here's what's interesting. They did research, and this was back in 2013 already. They looked at what would 4 times a day versus 2 times a day in protein intake or 8 times a day do. And out of all that research, that the 4 times a day was the ideal way to take protein as you're starting to pace that. So it's better to take incremental protein intake. And as you think about protein intake, look at your body weight. Your body weight in protein, you say, if I want to maintain my body composition, that means my muscle tonality, I want my body composition to be lean and clean. You take, that would be ideal. You take your body weight times 0.4 grams equals how many grams of protein that you need every day. And then you divide that by 4 times and take that amount in 4 times throughout the day. And then if you're saying, I need to turn up my fat burning furnace, I need to regain my muscle density, I need to put on a little muscle, I need to turn up my fat burning furnace, the equation goes like this: body weight times 0.8 grams of protein. And then you divide that in 4 times and take that incrementally 4 times during the day. And then if it is that you're working with an athlete, you're looking at somebody that says, you know, I'm really trying to increase my muscle density, I'm putting on some weight. Weight means more muscle. Weight does not necessarily mean, I mean, there are football players I know out there, and you can look at somebody that's got, you know, 290 pounds on them, and they're lean and they're, you know, they're clean, right? And then we have another 290 pound person who's a football player, and he's not as lean and clean, but the diameter, the circumference of the girth is completely different. So that means that that body has too much fat, and that body is moving too much of that around to the point in which it's actually causing, that's a heart risk, that's a health risk. And as a result of that, it might be blood pressure issues. There could be a number of things that are going on, but sleep is critical in all of this process. So on the days that you are cleansing, make sure that you are going to get yourself some good rest. If you feel like you're hungry, drink some more water, take your body weight divided by 2, and that's the number of ounces of water we need every day. So if it is you weigh 100 pounds, divide that by 2, that means that you need what is called 50 ounces of water. And start looking at how much water we take in. So again, pacing your protein and your water before, and then continue to give your body some support along with taking some nutrients that are going to support you. If you're going to take in nutrients, no chewing. It's all liquid on your fasting days. And so take on your water. And then if you're going to increase what is called some support in the cleansing process, I say lemon water is wonderful. There are cleansing products in the market that you can use to put in your water. I like to use a product called Cleanse for Life and put that in that water to be able to go and help scrub the internal part of the body. And it also helps support the phagocyte to take on encapsulating the debris, the foreign matter. And I like to use distilled water so that its negative charge is going to go after the positives, so it can go and trap them and escort them. So kind of some tips here in terms of like what we really do, taking a look at what I can do today matters for my tomorrows to be. How is that? How do I feel? And then all of a sudden, even neurologically, you're mentally clearer. Like, because the body can go and pull those toxins out of every part of your system. So we talk about it from your abdomen. We can talk about your gut flora changes, your cells that are going to be replicating. They have clear pathways. And then just go back and paste back into your protein and take in your food. If you're going to eat food, stay away from baked or fried foods. You know, take on clean foods, I say raw or steamed vegetables and so on. And your body loves living food. And that's what we're talking about here tonight. So for us to be able to say, I can be trim, I can be slim, but I can be fit and I can be fabulous, has to do with your body composition, your muscle density, being dense to hold your bones in place. All of this matters. And we can do the little things to get the max out. So here we are. I have to say, back to you, Lisa. I don't know if there's any questions out there, but certainly I'd be glad to address what's there. Over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lidy. That was absolutely awesome. I learned that it's not about the weight. It's just about keeping our bodies healthy. So intermittent fasting, a lot of times we think about, well, in my case, I think about that I need to do it for the weight loss. Not thinking about it, it's just a good way we need to keep our bodies healthy and clean up the cells and all of that. So that was awesome. Thank you so much. And did anybody out there, does anybody have any questions for Lidy?
Hey, Jeanette. Hey, Sonia, Kelly. All right.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you so much, Lidy, again, for your amazing heart and you're so full of knowledge. I would love to, I could just follow you around and listen to everything that comes out of your mouth 24/7. So, but thank you so much. And you guys, thanks for coming on the call. It is recorded, and have a beautiful evening. Mwah.
Love you all.
Bye.